All right, welcome to this deep dive.
Okay.
We're stepping onto the court today, but, we're not going to be analyzing like backhands or anything like that.
Right.
We're going deep inside the minds of pro tennis players.
Oh, cool.
And we're going to try and understand the mental game that separates champions from everyone else.
Yeah.
You sent us an excerpt
Uh-huh.
about all the mental pressures these athletes face. And honestly, the intensity is like out of this world.
Oh, yeah. It's wild. It's easy to just focus on the physical stuff in tennis, but the mental part of it, the toll it takes, I mean, wow. This excerpt, it shows how players deal with like 75 to 80 matches a year.
What?
Some matches going over 5 hours.
5 hours?
Yeah, that kind of endurance and focus. Most people can't even imagine that.
No.
Especially, with the constant worry about injuries.
5 hours is like work longer than most of my work days.
Yeah.
And 80 matches a year.
Yeah.
They practically live on tour.
It's like their whole life, yeah.
So how do they even start to build that mental toughness? It seems almost, I don't know, superhuman.
You got to be resilient. That's the key.
Okay.
Every single point, every serve, it all matters. The excerpt talks about how just missing a first serve, it can set off this chain reaction, it messes with the player's confidence, and it can affect the whole match. Yeah. It's high stakes. The smallest mistake can snowball. So learning to bounce back, that mental strength, that's crucial.
Wow. It makes you think, even those tiny moments, like a missed serve, are actually part of this huge mental battle.
Oh, absolutely.
I bet there are certain points in a match that make that pressure even worse.
Oh, for sure. Deuce.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect example. It's not just a score. It's like this psychological turning point. It can totally change a player's momentum.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It could lead to a break point, totally shift the whole match. And if a player's already struggling, that pressure just explodes.
It's like there's 2 matches going on then. The one on the court and the one in their head.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what the source means by the mental match?
Exactly. It's all about emotional stability. Staying focused, staying calm no matter what craziness is happening around you.
Right.
The source makes a really good point. Natural talent can only take you so far. It's that mental toughness, that ability to manage your emotions that really lets a player play their best.
That makes sense. The concentration they need is insane. There's no time clock in tennis.
Yep.
How do they stay locked in for hours and hours?
Routines. That's how it's all in the excerpt. Like those rituals before a serve, mantras, visualizing things, These routines become like mental anchors.
Okay.
They help players tune out distractions, stay present, and build that crucial self-belief.
So it's not just superstition then. It's actually strategic.
Totally.
The excerpt also mentions how important confidence is.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond just feeling good. It almost sounds like confidence is a skill, something you can train.
That's a huge takeaway from this. Confidence isn't just a feeling. It's a fundamental thing that directly affects how you play. The excerpt, it talks about how being insecure leads to unforced errors. And even the best player in the world can lose to someone with a stronger mindset.
Really?
Yeah, that's how powerful it is.
Wow. So it's not just about hitting the ball. You got to hit it with conviction.
Exactly.
This is making me see tennis in a whole new light, how much of a mental game it is. What about this momentum thing? It's like this mysterious force in sports, but can players actually control it?
Momentum is so interesting. The source describes it as this kind of synergy you create between your physical game, your emotions, and your strategy.
Okay.
It's about taking advantage of those times when everything clicks, riding that wave to boost your performance.
I get it. But surely, even with all that mental training, the pressure must get to them sometimes. How do they handle it when a match gets really tight and the stakes are rising?
You know what one of the most effective tools is? Breathing. Controlled breathing. It sounds so basic. Yeah.
But it has this huge effect on managing anxiety, keeping your energy up, and staying clear-headed under pressure. It's not just about calming down. It's about sharpening your focus when it matters most.
So all these relaxation techniques, the focus exercises, building confidence, they're not just nice extras. They're essential for success.
100%. In a sport where the difference between winning and losing is so tiny, having that psychological edge is what matters.
Yeah.
These mental tools, they're what let players push through exhaustion, get past setbacks, and really reach their full potential.
It's really interesting how, psychology can just completely change how things go on the court. But I'm curious, how did this whole emphasis on the mental game in tennis even start? Was it always, seen as important? Or is it something newer?
That's a really good question. You'd think it would have been obvious from the beginning, but this excerpt Kind of suggests it wasn't. It mentions that, like, even though experts have always known that mental toughness is important, actually incorporating sports psychology
Yeah.
into, like, training programs, that took a while.
Yeah, it is interesting how that shift happened. I mean, the basics of sports psychology go way back, like to the early 1900s. But it seems like for ages, the focus in tennis was all about technique and being in top physical shape.
So the mental side was almost like an afterthought. That's kind of surprising, given how much we've talked about how much it matters.
Yeah, it seems that way. The excerpt explains that as tennis got more and more competitive, people started to see the limits of just physical training. To get to those really high levels, players needed more than just powerful serves and being quick on their feet. They needed the mental tools to deal with the pressure and the emotional ups and downs that come with pro tennis.
Which brings us back to those, like, really key moments during a match. We talked about deuce, but are there other situations that really put a player's mental strength to the test? I imagine being down a set and facing a break point. That must be super tough.
Oh, absolutely. The excerpt specifically mentions that scenario as like a prime example of when mental toughness is everything. The pressure's huge, and it really shows whether a player can stay calm, stick to their game plan, and not just fall apart under the pressure.
It must feel like every point, every decision just weighs a ton in those moments. Just thinking about it is mentally exhausting.
Totally. And that's exactly why mental training is so important. It gives players the skills to not only deal with that pressure, but actually do well under it. The source really stresses the importance of staying focused on the present moment instead of getting hung up on past mistakes or worrying about what might happen.
You talked about routines earlier as a way to stay grounded. Can you give some specific examples of how those mental techniques are actually used? I'm picturing those pre-serve rituals, but what else do they do?
Those pre-serve rituals are a perfect example. Like the excerpt points out that bouncing the ball a certain number of times, adjusting their grip, taking those deep breaths, those aren't just like little quirks or superstitions. They're things they do on purpose to calm their nerves, focus their attention, and get themselves ready. It's about creating a sense of like familiarity and control when the pressure's on.
So it's about having a mental anchor, a way to reset and refocus before each point. What other techniques does the excerpt mention?
Visualization is another powerful tool. Players often mentally go through key shots or difficult situations, picturing themselves doing it perfectly. This builds confidence and prepares them for the pressure of the actual match.
It's like they're pre-programming their minds for success. That sounds really effective. What about those mantras we were talking about earlier? How do they use those in practice?
Mantras are those short, positive phrases players repeat to themselves, usually silently, to stay motivated, block out distractions, or just refocus. It could be something as simple as, stay focused one point at a time, or I can do this. These mantras reinforce good mental habits and help them keep a positive internal conversation going during the match.
It's like they're building a mental toolkit full of strategies to use when things get tough. And I'm guessing these techniques aren't just for the pros, right? Could a regular tennis player benefit from using some of these in their game?
Oh, absolutely. The ideas behind sports psychology, they apply to everyone. Whether you're a seasoned player or just starting out, learning to control your nerves, focus better, and build confidence, that can make a huge difference in how you play. The source emphasizes that anyone can learn these skills if they're willing to put in the effort.
It's like unlocking this hidden potential, not just in tennis, but in any part of life where there's pressure and you need to perform well.
You got it. The excerpt makes the point that the resilience, focus, and emotional control you build on the court, those are valuable skills that you can use in other areas of your life too. Whether you're facing a tough exam, giving a presentation, or even having a difficult conversation, those mental tools can make all the difference.
So it's not just about winning tennis matches. It's about building mental strength that can help you in all parts of your life. That's a really powerful takeaway. We've talked a lot about how pressure and insecurity can hurt a player's game, but what about the positive side? How does confidence actually show up when someone's playing?
Confidence can completely change the game. The source describes it almost like a superpower on the court. It lets players take risks, go for those big shots, and play with a sense of freedom and aggression. When you're confident, you trust your instincts, your decisions, and your ability to perform under pressure.
It sounds like confidence becomes this self-fulfilling thing. You believe in yourself, you play better, and that makes you even more confident. It's like a positive cycle.
Exactly. And it's not just about your own confidence either. The excerpt explains that how confident your opponent seems can also affect your own mental state even before the match starts.
So it's like this mental game of chess where you're trying to project confidence while also trying to make your opponent doubt themselves.
Exactly. It's a fascinating dynamic that shows how important mental toughness is. It's not just about controlling your own emotions, it's about understanding your opponent's mental state and using that too.
This is making me think about tennis in a whole new way. It's not just physical skills and strategy. It's this complex mental game between the players.
That's what makes it so interesting. The mental game adds a whole new level of complexity to a sport that's already full of skill and strategy.
It's clear that understanding the mental game is key to reaching your full potential as a player. But what about the role of coaches? What do they do to help their players develop this mental strength?
Coaches are super important. The source really highlights how it's their job to create a positive and supportive environment where players feel comfortable exploring their mental strengths and weaknesses.
So it's more than just teaching technique and strategy. It's about building a relationship based on trust and open communication.
Absolutely. The best coaches get that a player's mental state is just as important as their physical condition. They create a safe space for players to work through challenges, learn coping mechanisms, and build the resilience they need to handle pressure.
It's like they're mentors, guiding them not just on the court, but in their development as athletes and people.
Exactly. And it reinforces the idea that mental toughness isn't something you're born with. It's something you build over time with the right support and guidance.
It's amazing how every aspect of tennis, from training to competition, is shaped by these mental factors. Before we wrap up, I want to dive a bit deeper into this momentum idea. It's mentioned a lot in the excerpt, but it seems like this mysterious force, almost magical. Can you explain it a little more?
Momentum is definitely a fascinating concept. The source describes it as this intangible force that can totally change the course of a match. It's that feeling of confidence and energy that can propel a player to victory while making their opponent feel completely deflated.
It sounds like catching lightning in a bottle. But how do players actually harness momentum? Is it something they can control, or is it more about recognizing it and going with it when it happens?
It's a little bit of both, actually. While you can't just force momentum to happen, you can definitely do things to make it more likely. The excerpt emphasizes how important it is to have a strong foundation, which means mastering your technique, having a solid game plan, and building that mental toughness we've been talking about.
So it's about setting the stage, creating the conditions for momentum to appear.
Exactly. And then when those opportunities come up, it's about seeing them and seizing the moment. It could be hitting a perfect shot, winning a crucial point, or even sensing that your opponent is starting to doubt themselves.
It's like feeling a change in the energy of the match, sensing that the momentum is shifting in your favor and using that to your advantage.
Exactly. And when you feel that shift, it's about riding that wave of confidence and energy to take your game to the next level.
It's like turning those small wins into a chain reaction of positive momentum. And I guess losing momentum can be just as bad.
Oh, absolutely. A few unforced errors, a missed opportunity, even a lucky shot from your opponent, those can chip away at your confidence and make you start to doubt yourself, as the excerpt explains.
It's like all the energy just gets sucked out of your game.
Exactly. And that's when mental resilience becomes absolutely crucial. It's about having the mental strength to get through those rough patches, bounce back from setbacks, and keep fighting for every point, no matter what.
It's about not letting the momentum swing too far in the wrong direction.
Precisely. And that's where those mental techniques we discussed earlier, like the routines, visualization, and positive self-talk, they all come in. They help players stay grounded, focused, and confident, even when it feels like everything is going against them.
So it's this constant battle to keep that balance, to try and keep the momentum on your side as much as possible.
Exactly. And that's what makes the mental game in tennis so fascinating. It's this constant interplay of skill, strategy, and psychology, all competing for control on the court.
This deep dive has been so insightful. It's really clear that mental strength is just as important as physical ability in pro tennis.
Absolutely. The mental game is often the unseen force that separates the good players from the great ones, the champions from the contenders.
And what's really interesting is that these mental strategies aren't just for elite athletes. They can be used by anyone who's dealing with pressure, challenges, or who needs to perform at their best in any field.
Exactly. The things we learn from the mental game in tennis can be applied to any area of life where resilience, focus, and confidence are important.
It's about using the power of your mind to achieve your goals, both on and off the court.
Exactly. And that's a message that goes way beyond sports. This deep dive has been an amazing journey into the minds of tennis champions. We've uncovered the secrets of their mental toughness, the strategies they use to stay focused and calm under pressure, and how important confidence is in helping them reach their full potential.
It's been fascinating to explore these unseen forces that shape success in one of the most demanding sports in the world.
And now, for our listener who's ready to use these insights in their own life, I have a thought-provoking question for you to think about.
So we've seen how important these mental techniques are for, like, the top players in tennis. But the real question is, how can, like you listening, how can you apply these things to your own life?
Right.
Whether it's, giving a big presentation at work or just dealing with everyday stuff, these tools could really make a difference.
That's what's so exciting about all this. These strategies, they aren't just for pro athletes. Think about those times in your life when the pressure's on, like a big exam, a tough conversation, even just those everyday things that can kind of throw you off.
Yeah.
What if you could handle those moments with the same mental strength as a top tennis player?
I love that idea. But where do you even begin? Is it about, like, specific exercises, or is it more about just, like, shifting your whole mindset?
The excerpt really focuses on self-awareness as the first step. It's
Ah.
about understanding how you react to pressure. Do you freeze up? Do you start with all that negative self-talk?
Oh, yeah?
Once you see those patterns, you can start trying techniques to deal with them.
So, like, for someone who gets nervous before presentations, maybe they could create a little routine they do beforehand.
Exactly. Or if you always fall into negative self-talk, try replacing those thoughts with positive affirmations. Remember those mantras. Those can be super helpful for changing your internal dialogue.
It's pretty cool to realize we have more control over our mental state than we think.
Yeah.
But let's be real, it's not going to be easy to change those habits we've had for so long, right?
Of course not. Building mental toughness, it's a process, not a magic solution. There will be times when you slip back into old habits. That's totally normal. The main takeaway from the excerpt is to treat it like any other skill you're learning. Practice regularly, try different things, and most importantly, don't give up on yourself.
So it's like you're building mental muscle.
Yeah.
It takes effort, dedication, and a bit of patience.
I love that analogy. And just like with physical training, consistency is key. The more you practice these mental techniques, the more natural they become, and the better you'll be at handling challenges when they come up.
This has been a really incredible deep dive.
Yeah.
We started by looking at the intense mental demands of pro tennis, and we ended up uncovering some practical strategies that anyone can use to deal with the pressures in their own life.
Absolutely. It's been great exploring all this with you. And remember, it's not about becoming a tennis pro. It's about tapping into that strength and resilience we all have inside.
Yeah. And to everyone listening, as you go about your day, remember, that mental game is always going on. Take a deep breath, picture yourself succeeding, and step onto your own personal court with the confidence of a champion. You never know what you might achieve,